At this time, we'll have Agricultural, Natural, and Economic Resources Committee. Senator Sanderson. Any of your cohorts assisted? Okay. Looks like you caught it, Senator Sanderson. Welcome.
Well, I know my orders when I hear them. I want to first thank the committee for hearing the budget this morning. I want to thank all of our staff that have helped us and my two co-chairs. They've been excellent to work with. Highlights of the Agriculture, Natural, and Economic Resources. The Senate budget for AGNR in fiscal year 2023-24 includes net appropriations of $821 million, which is $111 million above the base budget, a 16% increase. Fiscal year 24-25 includes net appropriations of $813 million, which is $104 million above the base budget, a 15% increase. These are the AGNR adjustments below. Major highlights of the AGNR budget include $38 million for parks, trails, and land preservation grants, and $43 million for economic development. Under the Department of Commerce, provides $7.3 million recurring and $4.7 million non-recurring for operating needs throughout the department, including needs in forestry, food and drug, and the veterinary division. Provides $10 million non-recurring in the first year and nearly $9 million non-recurring in the second year for the North Carolina Agriculture Manufacturing and Processing Initiative for cost share grants to new and expanding agriculture manufacturing facilities. Provides $15 million non-recurring in both years for the biennium for farmland preservation. Under the provides $10 million recurring from the Economic Development Project reserved for the Mega Sites Readiness Program. Provides an additional $4 million non-recurring for the State Infrastructure Grant Program, and $15 million non-recurring in both years for the of the biennium for rural building reuse grants through the State Rural Infrastructure Grant Program. Provides $1.1 million recurring and $8 million non-recurring in both years for data modernization and permit transformation for IT projects. It modernizes certain environmental permits by increasing fees and modifying processing timelines. Altogether, permit fee increases will generate approximately $5.3 million for the continued support of permit processing and oversight staff throughout the department. And finally, it provides for a minimum level of staffing and regular exhibit updates through the State Historic Sites system, and it includes funding for Parks and Recreational Trust Fund and North Carolina Land and Water Fund grants to $28 million recurring in each year. And Mr. Chairman, that's our report.
Thank you, Senator Sanderson. Okay, next up will be Justice and Public Safety. I guess we have our duos coming, Senator Daniel and Senator Britt. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Going to go over highlights of the Justice Public Safety Senate budget. Senate budget for Justice and Public Safety in fiscal year 23-24 includes net appropriations of $3.6 billion, which is $197 million above the base budget, 5.8% increase. The 24-25 budget includes net appropriations of $3.7 billion, which is $293.9 million above the base budget, and an 8.6% increase. The Justice Public Safety budget invests in the judiciary system by providing 34 positions to support court technology implementation and establishing 6 public defender districts with 105 positions. The Department of Justice receives 15 new Medicaid investigation positions to combat fraud in the Medicaid program. The budget also provides $8.7 million for operations at juvenile justice facilities, $5.7 million for cybersecurity. Lastly, the budget directs $1 million to support educational opportunities for offenders and previously incarcerated individuals. Starting with Administrative Office of the Courts, this technology and business process personnel provides funding to convert 34 time-limited technology business process personnel into permanent positions to support court technology. provides funding for 5 district court judges and 10 superior court judges, as well as 10 special superior court judges. Creates a competitive grant program providing grant funding for nonprofit organizations serving victims of human trafficking. In special provisions, it raises the mandatory age of retirement for appellate judges from 72 to 76, authorizes work or work-related activities as an alternative to incarceration for persons delinquent on child support. It also provides supplemental funding to cover projected shortfalls in the private assigned counsel fund of $8 million in fiscal year 24-25. Creates new public defender districts, providing 105 positions for new public defenders' offices in District 5, 17, 13, 15, 17, 43A, and 43B. Under Department of Justice, the Medicaid Investigation Division positions provides funding to cover the state's share of 15 positions. That's 8 investigators, 6 attorneys, and 1 paralegal in the Medicaid Investigations Division. It also provides funding for ongoing replacement and updating of equipment at the State Crime Lab, and modifies Criminal Justice Fellows Program by expanding the counties in which graduates can find employment under the program and allowing participants additional time to complete the program in certain circumstances to cover the Department of Public Safety and Department of Adult Corrections portions of the budget. Senator Daniel.
Thank you, Senator Britt. Mr. Chair, I'm going to start with the Department of Public Safety provisions and budget. So the committee report provides for the juvenile justice facilities operating expenses, providing 86 positions for operating 3 juvenile justice facilities scheduled to open this biennium. That's $9.8 million in the first year, $8.7 million in the second year. State Highway Patrol provides additional funding for operating expenses, $1.9 million in both years. State Bureau of Investigation provides funding for 10 personnel positions to the SBI for various purposes, including specialized investigations into organized retail theft, officer-involved shootings, and internet crimes against children, $1.3 million in each year of the biennium. North Carolina Emergency Management School Safety Program provides funding for 3 positions to NCEM to support operations of several statewide school safety programs. That's $2.5 million in each year of the biennium. NC Emergency Management and Local Emergency Management Operations Support provides funding to support both state and government operations and grants for local emergency management offices to increase disaster response capacity. That's $4.7 million in the first year, $2.5 million in the second year, and those funds specifically are to backfill federal funds that are going away. Emergency Management and National Guard Cybersecurity Joint Task Force provides funding for 4 positions at Emergency Management and 30 positions at North Carolina National Guard to support cybersecurity protections and response for the state, local government, and critical infrastructure partners. That's $5.7 million in each year. Special provision, it directs requests for cybersecurity support services from local governments, state agencies, or critical infrastructure partners to be sent to Emergency Management's 24-hour watch for intake and activation. Moving to the Department of Adult Corrections, I think as Senator Britt mentioned, it provides offender education funding to increase post-secondary educational opportunities for offenders and previously incarcerated individuals. That's $1 million in each year. Special provision authorizes the department to increase compensation paid to inmates who perform fire service work in Western North Carolina in what's called the Bridge Program from $1 a day to $5 a day. That's a cooperative program between the Forestry Department and the Department of Adult Corrections. And I think that's the highlights of our section of the budget.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Daniel. Senator Britt. Up next is our Gen Gov, General Government. Have Senator Alexander. They're letting you do it alone?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, however...
Make sure your microphone's on.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, but however, directly after the meeting, Senator Ford has agreed to sing a rendition of Wonderland by Night, so...
Okay, I'll see if that might be out of order.
Well, they'll be after the meeting. I do want to thank my co-chairmen, Senators Ford and Jarvis, and the fiscal staff for their help for this budget for the Gen Gov committee. I want to kind of highlight some of the major areas. The Senate budget for the Gen Gov committee for this year will include a net appropriation of $522.1 million, which is a $19.7 million amount above the base budget for a 3.9% increase. For the fiscal year 24-25, it includes a net appropriations of $533.1 million, which is a $30.4 million above the base budget for a 6% increase. And these are some of the highlights. We worked very hard as a committee within the budgetary constraints we had to balance the various state agency budgets and address their most pressing needs in the areas of staffing and operating support and equipment replacement. But we also had several other areas of emphasis, which include $56 million over the biennium to provide services for affordable housing and to address homelessness and housing insecurity for veterans and victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, to continue an emphasis that this committee started several years ago. The budget also includes $15 million over the biennium to support volunteer fire and rescue and emergency medical services in departments and units across the state. Some of the highlights of the different offices: the Department of Administration provides $1 million in recurring in the 23-24 and $1.5 million recurring 24-25 for organizations that provide services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. Within the Housing Finance Agency, we provided $10 million non-recurring in each year for the Housing Trust Fund to provide housing for homeless veterans and victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Within the Department of Insurance, providing $1 million non-recurring in each year for grants up to $10,000 to eligible volunteer fire departments for the replacement of fire truck tires. Those are very expensive. We provided $1 million non-recurring in each year for grants up to $25,000 for equipment and up to $200,000 for capital improvements for standalone volunteer rescue units. And then we adjusted the base budget to reflect the suspension of premiums paid by volunteer safety workers participating in the Volunteer Safety Workers' Compensation Program. The costs incurred for the biennium will actually be paid from the cash balance in the fund, and that's currently sitting at approximately $59 million. Some of the special provisions in the Board of Elections: it eliminates the recurring funding and prohibits the State Board of Elections from joining the consortium of elected officials, otherwise known as ERIC. And then the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, there were several items here. I'll go over those. We provided $500,000 in the fiscal year 23-24 and $1 million in fiscal year 24-25 for additional Veteran Service officers to be assigned to 2 new regional Veteran Service Centers in the congressional districts of 4 and 8, where there are no regional center exists at this time. We provide $1 million in recurring for grants to county veterans offices, $500,000 non-recurring in each year of the biennium to continue support for various activities focused on maintaining the military presence and defense industry across the state, which is very important. We provide $10 million in non-recurring in each year for the biennium to establish a grant program to address homelessness and housing insecurity in the veteran population. It provides $3 million non-recurring in each year for a grant to Purple Heart Homes Incorporated to assist disabled and aging veterans with assistance to veterans experiencing housing insecurity, and provides $1.5 million non-recurring grant in each year of the biennium to Military Missions in Action to provide support to disabled veterans needing assistance with housing modifications and to assist homeless veterans. And then the Department of Revenue provides $30 million non-recurring 2023 for the first phase of the state's legacy tax system replacement project. And those are the highlights of our budget, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Alexander. And now we will have our, I think, we have our transportation. Senator Sawyer, let's see. Who's that guy coming up? We have Senator Lazar and Senator McGinnis. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. You ready for me to take
Yes,
off?
sir, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. On behalf of my colleagues, Senator Lazara and Senator Sawyer, I bring you greetings today from the transportation system of North Carolina, which represents the second greatest number of centerline road miles in America. I want to thank our staff who's done such an outstanding job of helping us to prepare this important document. Highlights of the Department of Transportation budget today are the Senate budget for transportation fiscal year 23-24 includes a net appropriation of $5.3 billion, which is $759 million above the base budget and a 17% increase. Fiscal year 24-25 includes a net appropriation of $5.6 billion, which is $1.1 billion above the base budget. Again, a 25% increase. The highlights of the transportation adjustments are follows below. The executive summary over the biennium, the budget provides additional funds of $1.1 billion for the State Transportation Improvement Program, known as the STIP, for construction projects. This will significantly increase the time and shorten the time it takes for us to get these projects in the hopper. $531 million to other highway programs, including contract resurfacing, general maintenance, and our bridge programs. $25 million to the Department of Motor Vehicles, known as the DMV, and related programs, including facilities operation, license and theft updates, and compensation for license plate agencies, known as LPAs. Our highway fund, the increase to the highway fund is due to the increased forecast of revenues. This increase totals $285 million above the fiscal year 23-24 base budget, an 11% increase, and $514 million above the 24-25 base budget, a 19% increase. These revenues, including motor fuels tax, DMV license and fees, the highway use tax for short-term leases, and the transfer of 1% of total sales tax revenue from the general fund in fiscal year 23-24 and 1.5% transfer from fiscal year 24-25. The Highway Trust Fund, the increases to the Highway Trust Fund is due to the increased forecast of revenues as well. This increase totals $474 million above the 23-24 base budget, which is a 26% increase, and $611 million above the 24-25 base budget, a 33% increase. The main source of the increase is the transfer of 3% of the total sales tax revenue from the general fund in 23-24 and 4.5% in 24-25. At this time, I'll turn the podium over to Chairman Lazara for the report on committees as well as special provisions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator McGinnis. Welcome, Senator Lazar.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator McGinnis. I'll be going over the committee report and special provisions. We provide additional funds of $5.8 million in fiscal year 23 and 24 and $9.9 million in fiscal year 24-25. We include 4 FTEs for the Facilities Maintenance Division, which will allow them to improve the maintenance of the Highway Division buildings and shed and the many buildings that they have across the state. We also provide an additional $531 million for highway maintenance, bridge construction, and preservation. The total available for these activities is $1.9 billion in the fiscal year 23-24 and $2.2 billion in fiscal year 24 and 25. We provide an additional $31 million for the Powell bill over the biennium. This will bring the annual appropriation to $170.4 million in each year of the biennium. We provide $12.4 million for the DMV merchant transaction costs for electronic payments and let's see here, electronic payments and a new fee that will begin in fiscal year 24-25 to fully fund these costs. We provide an additional $14.2 million over the biennium for the ferry division for maintenance, upgrades, and training. We provide non-recurring funds of $12.7 million fiscal year 23-24 for capital repairs and renovations and to completely fund previous projects. We provide an additional $1.1 billion over the biennium for the statewide transportation improvement program known as the STIP, bringing the total available dollars to $2.1 billion in fiscal year 23 and 24 and $2.2 billion in fiscal year 24 and 25. Moving over to the special provisions, we will require the Facility Maintenance Division to create 14 new FTEs to manage building maintenance at local highway division offices. The FMD must report on the progress of hiring staff and on the status of building replacements and renovations to the board. It requires the Board of Transportation to establish tolls on all ferry routes, including authorization of a commuter pass for all routes. We consolidated the fund codes for Rail and Integrated Mobility Division and will require OSBM to certify transparent budgets within these divisions. We'll require the Legislative Service Officer and Joint Legislative Transportation Oversight Committee to study the privatization of modernization of DMV using consultant services. We'll be increasing the annual registration fee as a result of NC 10 for electric vehicles to $180 and creates additional annual registration fee of $90 for plug-in hybrid vehicles. We require the DMV to develop a plan for adding a fee to electronic payment transaction and authorizes DMV to charge a fee for these transactions not to exceed 2% of the payment amount beginning July 1, 2024 to recover those costs. It increases the LPA compensation for title transactions from $1 to $2 per transaction and increases the transfer from Highway Trust Fund to the Highway Fund to budget for those increases. Mr. Chairman, that concludes our report.
Thank you, Senator Lazara. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. At this time, we'll have our IT budget. Senator Heiss, our information technology. Good morning again.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The Senate budget for information technology includes a net appropriation of $81.8 million, which is a $9.3 million increase above base budget in the first year, and a net appropriation of $79.3 million, which is a $2.5 million decrease from the base budget. Some of the highlights of this budget: it provides funds for NC Health Connect infrastructure and operational services, $2.2 million each year. Provides funds for the NC Health Connect provider outreach, $4.8 and $3.8 million respectively. Provides funds for the Government Data Analytics Center modernization, $6 million in the first year, $3 million in the second year. Transfer funds from the State Fiscal Recovery for an awareness and digital literacy campaign, $12.5 million the first year, $7.7 million the second year. And transfers the projected unearned interest from the State Fiscal Recovery Reserve for the awareness and digital campaign of $4.8 million for 24-25. Funds provided from the State Fiscal Recovery Fund for broadband administration, $3.8 million in both years of the biennium. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the highlights of the information technology budget as well as the budget.
Okay, well, thank you, Senator Heiss. And members, you have 20 minutes to submit to bill drafting any amendments. So just a friendly reminder. At this time, we will open it up for discussion from the members. Any questions, discussions? Senator Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll start. In terms of the Smart Start and pre-kindergarten programs, and maybe I'm not reading correctly, I don't see any increase in those, or am I wrong? And is there no need for increase, or can someone explain, maybe Senator Lee or whoever, what have we done with the need, with the pre-K programs and Smart Start in terms of the additional needs in our state?
Okay. Thank you, Senator Robinson, for the question. I'll ask one of our ed chairs to jump in and try and answer. HHS, excuse me. Senator Crowley.
I would refer that to staff, please.
Okay. All right. Luke. Good morning, Luke.
Sure, rolling around.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Luke McDonald, Fiscal Research. Senator Robinson, there's no change to the NC Pre-K program, change from the base budget. The only change to Smart Start included in the budget is a $1.5 million non-recurring each year, and that goes towards the Dolly Parton Imagination Library program to help with their increased cost of providing books.
Follow, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Follow up.
So, and I guess the co-chairs are just shifting everything to staff. So, do we not have any children out there who are, where we have the need for additional slots for these kids? Don't we have a wait list out there?
Luke, would you like to respond, please?
Yes, Luke McDonald, Fiscal Research. Senator Robinson, there's no statewide wait list for the NC Pre-K program. Each county or each NC Pre-K region would keep that on their own, and I know there are some that do keep a wait list, but we don't have access to a statewide wait list. That's kind of done locally.
Thank you, Luke. Senator Robinson, follow up.
Well, I'm confused because normally we do have a wait list for pre-K and for Smart Start in terms of the children out there who need access to these programs. So I'm confused by why that doesn't show up. The other question I have is, I notice in the budget there is an increase in need-based aid for public universities and community colleges. I did not see that for private colleges and universities in our state. Can someone address that, please? If we're going to increase the need-based aid, usually it's across the board for all North Carolina students who would go into higher education. Can we address that?
All right, I will ask Steve Bailey if he would please to respond to that question, Senator Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Bailey, Fiscal Research. Senator Robinson, so there is $91.1 million in the base for the private need-based scholarship, but there is no increase to that scholarship in the Senate budget. You are correct that there is an increase of $25 million recurring in the second year for the public scholarship. That's directed specifically to community college students, that increase. But yes, you are correct.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
You good, Senator Robinson?
Not really.
What?
Not really. They also in
Well, wait a minute. You should be.
No, I'm not. I'm not. You left a whole lot out. In the House budget, there was an appropriation for HBCU private institutions, and I don't see that in the Senate. Is there a reason?
There is no reason. It is not in there, Senator Robinson. We will discuss that when we get to conference.
Okay. I'll hold off for a minute, let everybody else talk.
Okay. Other questions from the members? Senator Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share my colleagues' wondering and confusion about why some of these are in here. The one I would like to have someone explain why it's here is on page 198 of the policy budget bill here. It's the way I read this, I think is what it's saying is we will no longer permit the use of state funding for the provision of family planning services, pregnancy prevention activities, or adolescent parenting programs. And I'm wondering, especially in light of the abortion bill ban that's going through this chamber, why we would be including a provision like that in this budget. Can anyone explain that to me, what the thinking is behind refusing to fund family planning services, pregnancy prevention, and adolescent parenting programs?
Okay. Would someone from, let's hold on one second, please. Senator Crowley, would you like to take a stab at that question? It's on page 198, and I assume, Senator Marcus, you're referring to the new language because the top part is current language.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If not, I can direct it to staff.
I'm going to refer it to staff also.
Okay. All right. Bill drafting, okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Joyce Jones, Legislative Drafting Division. I will simply summarize what the provision is doing. It is prohibiting state agencies from contracting with any provider of family planning services, pregnancy prevention activities, or adolescent parenting programs if the provider performs abortions. This section would not prevent the department or any other state agency from paying any health care provider for services authorized under the state health plan or the Medicaid program.
Thank you, Joyce. Senator Marcus.
I guess just a follow-up comment, which is I appreciate staff doing her best to answer the why question, but I don't think staff can answer the why question, and that's what I'm trying to get at. It sounds like nobody in this committee can explain to me why we would make that policy choice, and that's really disappointing. That we would deny these sorts of services to people in North Carolina.
Thank you for that comment and your question. Other questions, comments? Senator McGinnis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the amount of money that was added to the lottery school building project, I applaud and thank you for that. But one of the challenges that I have seen in some of my LEAs, especially in the rural part of North Carolina, is that they're not equipped to get these schools built, and not only in a timely manner, but at the most efficient and effective and best price method, which of course in today's world is design build. Also, I'd like to see us talk about that and have some conversation about that for this part of that legislation, as well as to establish a standardized plan for K-5, for middle school and high schools that can be implemented across North Carolina without the need to spend $2 or $3 million on an architect and save some money. One of the schools that I have that I've had the most problem with, they go out and hire an architect and they have a fixed amount of money, but then the bid comes in $10 or $15 million greater. And we've spent all this money on an architect without an escape clause, and we don't have a school, we're short money, and we're back to square one. One particular school that I'm thinking of has done this not one time, but twice. And each time they've lost money, inflation has carried on further, and they still don't have the middle school that they want. I'm confident there are other schools in North Carolina that are having the same dilemma. I would hope that we'd be able to look at that and see if we couldn't implement something as a requirement for them to look at design build as one concept, and also a standardized plan that can be implemented across our state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Senator McGinnis. Thank you for the comments. Questions? Comments from the members? Seeing none, this time we will entertain, do we have the list? Do we have a list of the speakers that wanted to speak? Okay. Okay, looks like we just got one. Brent Heath, I will call upon you to come up. If you would, please tell us your name, what organization you're with.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brent Heath. I'm the legislative liaison for the North Carolina Department of Insurance. Mr. Chairman, I thank you and the committee for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. Commissioner Causey is in Columbus County performing his duties as Commissioner of Insurance, and he has asked that I represent him this morning as I address this body. On page 328, starting with line 20 of the bill text, Senate Bill 363 has been inserted into the state budget. And Commissioner Causey doesn't quite understand the purpose of that and is at awe that would be put in the budget and not be seen as a standalone bill. Just to give you a little bit of background with him, in the years that he has been in service as your state fire marshal, when he came on board, we had lots of fire departments that were on the verge of being dissolved because of the minimum requirements that were in the statutes that were requiring them to maintain to be a fire department. He worked with the legislature to decrease those minimum requirements while still protecting the communities, and was able to dramatically reduce the number of fire departments that would have been dissolved because of that. Before taking office as your state fire marshal, the ISO inspections in this state, some departments had been 15 to 20 years, or many departments had been 15 to 20 years since they had been inspected. Some had been 25 plus years since they had been inspected. The ISO rating, for those of you not familiar with that, that determines the rates that your constituencies and the businesses in your community pay on their insurance premiums. And it also, many businesses, when they're looking to move to North Carolina, the ISO ratings in those districts is something that they consider. Currently, we have a 5-year cycle on all our ISO ratings. During his tenure of the nearly 1,250 fire departments, 700 of them's ISO ratings have been decreased, which means it's good for your constituents and for the businesses in your community. During his tenure, we have established the Emergency Training Center in Stanley County, which will provide specialized training for fire departments. They've been having to travel outside of the state to get that training, and now what will be offered here in other states will be coming to North Carolina to receive specialized training in those divisions. So the commissioner respectfully asked that this language be removed from the budget and be considered as a standalone bill, and that he would have opportunity to discuss, whether it's coming from the industry or wherever this bill language is coming from to resolve those concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Heath, and we will take note of the commissioner's thoughts on this part of the budget. Okay, any other comments from the committee? You have about 6 minutes to turn in any proposed amendments to bill drafting. Any other comments from the committee? If not, Senator Marcus, you act like you look like you're going to go for it.
I am debating whether to ask the question because I thought I was clear, but what you just said made me question. So if I can, Mr. Chair, just ask a clarifying question. Sure. There's a really short timeline this morning to request amendments as we're trying to hear about the bill and request amendments. I interpret these rules to mean any amendments that we want to present during this committee need to be submitted in the next 5 minutes. but there will be floor amendments later, and that'll give us a little breathing room to digest this budget and do amendments later as well. I just wanted to.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You can always have amendments on the floor, but, you have approximately 5 minutes to submit it to bill drafting, and then they have to be submitted back to our clerk here by 11:30 this morning.
Even for floor amendments?
No, ma'am.
Okay, for committee.
Yes, committee.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Any other questions? If not, this committee will stand adjourned until 11:30. Thank y'all.